Well, from Saint-Tropez to Hollywood, the author Aurelie Levy is here. Now, you've written a very funny novel about your own experience as a Hollywood superstar's assistant. In French, it's called Ma vie pour un Oscar. In English, it's called And the Oscar Goes To. What sort of dirty dishing in this book?
Everything you've always wanted to know about Hollywood and the behind the scenes of Hollywood, I describe. It's pretty funny, but there's also a very tragic dimension to the characters. I denounce, among other things, the solitude of a lot of celebrities who are, very much alienated by their fame, who struggle with many issues. I mean, you have to be pretty, neurotic in the first place to take on a profession like that. And I describe also, California, Los Angeles, that life, and the irony, really, of those celebrities who have everything and yet, are in a sort of malaise. I think we live in a world where many of us have a tendency to, admire and look up to these people who are, in fact, much less happy than we are.
Well, you lived over there for 10 years. You've come back to France. Why?
A love story brought me back to France.
Oh, okay. A Hollywood romance, perhaps.
I think once I finally left Hollywood, the true Hollywood romance came into my life. Perhaps that is the message in the book.
And one thing I want to know is who's the superstar that you're talking about in the book?
Aha! You'll have to read the book to sort of find out for yourself. I can tell you who it's not. It's not Tom Cruise. It's not Mel Gibson. It's not John Travolta.
But he's in the same league as these guys.
He's in the same league, yes. But to be very honest, I did work as a personal assistant to a famous actor for many years. The book is really inspired by a number of actors that I met while in Los Angeles. Yeah.
Any good, Augustin? Is it worth reading?
I think it's pretty good. It's very funny at first, and it's also a great take, on this generation who's obsessed with celebrity and success and money. And most of all, it's a lot of fun and contribute too much to a lot of French debut novels. And that really, I find it really interesting in that perspective. Aurelie, was it a kind of challenge for you to write this book in the French literary landscape?
Yes, I think having studied in the States and spoken in English for the past 10 years, I had a sort of freedom with the French language. I originally started writing because I was very frustrated in coming back to France and dealing with a very different society where people are very sort of negative, and I was really in a sort of American frame of mind when I wrote the book. And in the end, what people notice most about the book is my French take on America. So it's a take also on American society, on consumerism, on capitalism, and its consequences really on our daily lives.
Okay, it's always nice to put a book critic on the spot opposite an author and ask him what he thinks of a book.
Quite embarrassing, though.
We're running out of time, Augustin. If people have got time to read just one book this summer, what should they pick?
I think I'd go for an autobiography, a memoir, actually, by the British writer Jeanette Winterson. It's called Why Be Happy When You Could Be Normal, and it's definitely one of the best books I've read this year. Eve, in fact, she wrote, a book 25 years ago, a debut novel, and she tells the same terrible story of her life, her quest for identity and freedom in a difficult, dysfunctional family. But it could be depressing, but, her language is so witty and full of grace that the book is just great. I know that she was one of your guests also.
She's absolutely fabulous. She's one of my favourites. She came into the show and we talked a lot about her mother's abusive behaviour, locking her out of the house, locking her in the coal shed. And she told us that through the years she's learned to accept what happened and now recognises it was that and her mother's poor treatment of her that led to her writing.
Either you crumble and you fall to pieces, or you become dysfunctional in some way, or it gives you a different kind of strength. And if you're locked up or you're on your own for long periods, what do? You invent stories. And that's what I did. And I was always setting my narrative against hers, because she was a great fabulist and a storyteller in her own right. She said that my birth mother was either dead or a drunk or a drug addict, or that she'd exploded. There was always some strange story. So in order to counteract that, I learned to tell my own.
Fabulous writer, fabulous speaker. We saw her there, Jeanette Winterson. Augustin Trapenard, thank you so much for coming in and telling us about your summer reads.
Thank you, Eve.
And Aurelie Levy, the French author, thank you so much for coming in and telling us about your fabulous sounding new book.
Thank you for having me.
And that brings us to the end of the show. If you missed those titles, you can watch this programme again on our website at france24.com. You can also follow us on Facebook and me on Twitter at Eveling in Paris. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Ba-da-ba-da-beep-ba-ba-da-ba-beep-ba-da-ba-da-ba-beep-ba-da-ba-da-ba.